Hello， 大家好，欢迎来到北美韭菜日记，我是九九。这周的股市真的是不知道怎么形容。周一先是来了个巨大的拉升，然后连跌2天，非常的磨人。可能很多朋友更希望看到的是那种要杀要剐，你倒是来个痛快话之类的。大跌我能抄底，大涨我能赚钱，这么半死不活的吊着是最不愿意看到的。微信群 Discord 群也明显感觉到气氛没有之前活跃了。来看一下我账号里最近的亏损情况。我这个账号是去年6月底的时候建立的，本金是5万，最高的时候冲到过接近13万，这2周多的时间利润回吐了2万多，从最高点大概亏去了15%以上，也还算是可以接受。股市半死不活的状态下，我自己的策略就是和它耗着，减少骚操作，静观其变就好。当然了，最重要的前提还是手中持有的是你自己有信心的优质公司。如果我是重仓拿了一些前阵子被炒上天的垃圾股的话，一些公司连收入都没有，这个时候我肯定也是坐不住的。我很喜欢巴菲特的一句名言，就是 The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient。 翻译过来就是股票市场就是一台财富转移机器，会把没有耐心的人的财富转移给那些有耐心的人。另外一句所有人都耳熟能详的名言就是 Be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful。 这2句都很应景，所以送给各位朋友们共勉。股市行情不好的时候，我觉得虽然不适合盯盘，但是非常适合沉下心来听一听投资大师们的经验之谈，可以套用在自己身上，总结一下成功或者失败的教训。最近查理芒格在 Daily Journal 股东大会上的讲话，我觉得就非常有价值，所以把其中的精华部分总结了一下，分享给大家。因为查理芒格是我自己非常崇拜的投资大师，既有过人的智慧，同时也有着非常严苛的道德标准。在视频过程当中，我会做到尽量少插嘴。OK， 一起来看一下。
Many observers see market behavior that reminds them of the dot-com bubble, wild speculation, endless SPACs and IPOs soaring on their first day of trading. Do you agree that there is a close parallel to the late 90s and this is therefore, quote, must end badly?
Yes, I think it must end badly, but I don't know when.
You know, another shareholder, Bill Roberts, asked about SPACs, and he points out it seems like everyone, including actors, athletes, singers, and politicians, are getting into the business of promoting their own SPAC. Why do you think all these SPACs and the promoter, what do you think of all of the SPACs and the promoters pushing them?
Well, I don't participate at all, and I think the world would be better off without them. I think this kind of crazy speculation in enterprises not even found or picked out yet is a sign of an irritating bubble. It's just that the investment banking profession will sell shit as long as shit can be sold.
Charlie, last February, you spoke about the wretched excess in the financial system. Given the developments over the past year, could you give us an update on your assessment of wretched excess in the system? Where does it appear most egregious?
Well, it's most egregious in the momentum trading by novice investors lured in by new types of brokerage operation like Robinhood. And I think all of this activity is regrettable. I think civilization would do better without it. You'll remember that when the first big bubble came, which was the South Sea bubble in England back in the 1700s, it created such havoc eventually when it blew up that England didn't allow hardly any public trading in securities of any companies for decades thereafter. It just created the most unholy mess. So human greed and the aggression of the brokerage community creates these bubbles from time to time. And I think wise people just stay out of them.
Our second question, we have a couple of shareholders who are asking about this latest retail frenzy. So we have Gavin Smith who asks, what are Mr. Munger's thoughts on the recent GameStop short squeeze by social media and the resulting implications on short selling in the future? And another shareholder named Lee asked, dear Mr. Munger, please share your thoughts on the recent Wall Street Bets GameStop short squeeze. It seems to involve a lot of your standard causes of human misjudgment.
Well, it certainly does, and that's the kind of thing that can happen when you get a whole lot of people who are using liquid stock markets to gamble the way they would in betting on racehorses. And that's what we have going in the stock market. And the frenzy is fed by people who are getting commissions and other revenues out of this new bunch of gamblers. And of course, when things get extreme, you have things like that short squeeze. It's not generally noticed by the public, but clearinghouses clear all these trades. And when things get as crazy as they were in the event you're talking about, there are threats of clearinghouse failure. So it gets very dangerous. And it's really stupid to have a culture which encourages as much gambling in stocks by people who have the mindset of racetrack bettors. And of course it's going to create trouble, as it did. And I have a very simple idea on this subject. I think you should try and make your money in this world by selling other people things that are good for them. And if you're selling them gambling services where you rake profits off the top, like many of these new brokers who specialize in luring the gamblers in, I think it's a dirty way to make money, and I think that we're crazy to allow it.
Should there be a tax on buying stock now that Robinhood trades are free?
Well, Robinhood trades are not free. When you pay for order flow, you're probably charging your customers more and pretending to be free. It's a very dishonorable, low-grade way to talk. And nobody should believe that Robinhood's trades are free.
Previously, you have said, quote, it takes character to sit with all that cash and do nothing. I didn't get to where I am going but I didn't get to where I am by going after mediocre opportunities, end quote. In the past few years, equity prices have increased significantly, and cash has arguably become riskier due to central banking policy. Have you considered amending this quote or lowering your standards?
Well, I think everybody is willing to hold stocks at higher price earnings multiples when interest rates are as low as they are now. And so I don't think it's necessarily crazy that good companies sell at way higher multiples than they used to. On the other hand, as you say, I didn't get rich by buying stocks at high price earnings multiples in the midst of crazy speculative booms. And I'm not going to change. I am more willing to hold stocks at high multiples than I would be if interest rates were a lot lower. Everybody is.
What is the biggest competitive threat to U.S. banks like Bank of America and U.S. Bank, both equity holdings of the Daily Journal Corporation, over the long term? He asked, is it digital wallets like PayPal, Square, or Apple Pay? Is it Bitcoin, decentralized finance, or something else?
Well, I don't think I know exactly what the future of banking is, and I don't think I know how the payment system will evolve. I do think that a properly run bank is a great contributor to civilization, and that the central banks of the world like controlling their own banking system and their own money supplies. So I don't think Bitcoin is going to end up the medium of exchange for the world. It's too volatile to serve well as a medium of exchange. And it's really kind of an artificial substitute for gold. And since I never buy any gold, I never buy any Bitcoin. And I recommend that other people follow my practice. Bitcoin reminds me of what Oscar Wilde said about fox hunting. He said it was the pursuit of the uneatable by the unspeakable.
Which do you think is crazier? Bitcoin at 50,000 or Tesla's fully diluted enterprise value of 1 trillion? What do you make of these two pricings?
Well, I have the same difficulty that Samuel Johnson once had when he got a similar question. And he said, I can't decide the order of precedency between a flea and a louse. And I feel the same way about those choices. I don't know which is worse.
不好意思，这里实在没忍住想要插播一句。老观众们应该都知道，特斯拉和比特币是我目前最喜欢的2个投资标的。所以看到自己非常崇拜的投资大师把这2样东西比作了跳蚤和狮子，这种投资观、价值观的碰撞，我不知道如何评价。查理芒格在比特币几百块钱的时候就一直在抨击他了，所以这点我并不感到奇怪。但是目前还是不太清楚他为什么要看空特斯拉。要知道，伯克希尔持有多年的比亚迪也是在电车这个领域内的，而且估值也并不便宜。来看看他是怎么评价比亚迪的。
BYD is in the Daily Journal stock portfolio with a very big paper gain. The stock has gained so much this year and last year. The stock appreciated probably way more than intrinsic value. How do you decide to hold on to a stock or sell some?
Well, that's a very good question. BYD stock did nothing for the first 5 years we held it. And last year it quintupled. And what happened was that BYD is very well positioned for the transfer of Chinese automobile production from gasoline-driven cars to electricity-driven cars. You can't imagine it's in a wonderful position. And that excited the people in China, which has its share of crazy speculators. And so the stock went way up. Since we admire the company and like its position, and we like its, we have a tendency to, and we pay huge taxes to a combination of the federal government and the state of California when we sell something. And on balance, we hold in to certain of these positions when normally we wouldn't buy a new position. Practically everybody does that. One of my smartest friends in venture capital is constantly getting huge clumps of stocks at nosebleed prices. And what he does is he sells about half of them always. That way, whatever happens, he feels smart. I don't follow that practice, but I don't criticize it either.
Do you believe the valuations for electric car manufacturers are in bubble territory? Both Berkshire and Li Lu own BYD, a company you spoke highly of in the past. BYD sells at nearly 200 PE. This is cheap compared to Tesla, currently valued at over 1,100 times PE and 24 times sales. I know Berkshire is a long-term owner and rarely sells securities of high-quality companies it owns in its portfolio simply because it's overvalued, for example, Coca-Cola in the past. However, is there a price too high that the company's future profits simply cannot justify? Since we are on the subject of selling potentially overvalued security, could you provide your systems for selling securities?
Well, I so rarely hold a company like BYD that goes to a nosebleed price that I don't think I've got a system yet. And so I'm just learning as I go along. I think you can count on the fact that if we really like the company and like the management, and that is the way we feel about BYD, we're likely to be a little too loyal. And I don't think we'll change on that.
看到这里呢，我从他的回答当中依旧是不明白他为什么要看空特斯拉。首先，他评价比亚迪的这些所有观点，我几乎都可以套用在特斯拉的身上。特斯拉过去7年收入翻了15倍，股价几乎没有什么变化。比亚迪在中国地位稳固，加速了中国燃油车往电动车转型的进程。特斯拉在全球的电车领域内，目前也依然算得上是行业龙头，并且加速了全世界往新能源转型的进程。芒格老先生很喜欢比亚迪的管理层，所以即使股价太高，也不介意继续持有。我对马斯克也持有同样的看法，虽然不是很认同他在推特上带货狗狗币的行为，但是这个事儿也不至于大到说想要我去卖掉特斯拉的股票。他本人也就是这个作风。之前更过分的时候说要$420私有特斯拉，这种事情也不是没做过。我个人是觉得这些负面的影响和他做出的贡献相比的话，显然是后者更大的。和芒格老先生一样，我肯定也是不会仅仅因为估值过高，或者是担心市场崩盘，现在就决定出售自己特斯拉股票的。所以大家可以看到，即使是像查理芒格这么睿智的人，我自己也是不指望他能够帮助我做出每一个投资决定的。但是我应该向他学习的是他的思维模式，他的成功经验，甚至是失败经验，然后把这些经验套用在自己的身上。OK， 希望今天的这期视频能给正在迷惑的你们带来少许的收获。如果有的话，麻烦点赞、订阅九月频道。OK， 那本期视频就暂时先带来到这里了，我们下期视频再见，拜了个拜。